All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be with you all today. Got a very interesting conversation to understand AI intersection with CX as it relates to collaboration and AI and a whole bunch of other things. And with me today, Tom Martin. Good to see you again, Tom. It's been a few months, but great for you to join us. Tom is the CEO of Glance, and you've been there, what, a decade or so, really evolving the company from a tool to a viable enterprise application and solution. But we're going to talk on a couple of different dimensions, and one in particular is understanding what the omni-channel visual engagement principles are, and so you can talk a little bit about that as well. And the discussion today, just for everybody's benefit, is really focused on how tools like engagement and collaboration can help in customer adoption, customer service, those sorts of things. It's less around Glance. As I mentioned, Tom is the CEO of Glance. It's less around TTEC Digital specifically, which is a services and technology firm. It's really around thought leadership, which my sense is, Tom, from discussions with you and for those that know me, is the thought leadership around what people should be doing around these things is part of what's in yours and my DNA. So with all of that preamble out of the way, thank you and welcome to the conversation today.
Hey, Tom, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding. Well, as I introduced you, I was talking about this notion of Glance being a provider of omni-channel visual engagement. So let's just, we're not going to talk too much about it, but let's, semantics matter. And so what does that mean? Translate that for the eighth grader in me.
Sure. So collaboration, thinking about having a collaboration platform that really enables businesses to create those immersive experiences that bring real people together inside of a digital channel at just the right moment. And collaboration isn't just like, oh, like we're going to jump on video. It's really about most conversations center around content. And where does that content live? Oh, it's on a web page. It's a mobile device. It could be a piece of paper or a driver's license, thinking about how do I go through a know your customer KYC process. So you realize that content is king. Having collaboration that allows us to be able to navigate through that content, help someone fill out a form, guide them through steps, making selections, and being able to do it in a unified environment. So you're not like reaching for different tools. It's all part of that collaboration platform landscape to be able to effectively have a conversation with a customer, to go deep into that content and get them through the steps that they need to do to buy, configure, continue to use their product successfully.
Got it. You've sort of answered the next question I'm going to ask, but I'm going to raise up just slightly. When I'm having a conversation with people that are trying to help enterprise clients, the question I ask them is, well, what exactly is the pain that the client has? Now, I'm not talking about the customer. I'm talking about the client, the person, the company, the buyer of technology. So when you think about a solution like this in terms of this collaboration enablement, what exactly is the pain that the customer is that the client is trying to solve first and foremost?
Yeah. Today, because digital has taken over everybody's lives, they're trying to drive very specific outcomes. They're always around revenue, and it could be generating new revenue. It could be thinking about how do I retain revenue, and realizing that customers who don't get to that ideal state, which could be buying multiple products, lifetime value is dropping off. All of those things that are sitting there and saying, hey, you know what, we used to drive revenue through these types of channels and get these types of outcomes. Digital, we're not having the same outcomes, and we're struggling to retain customers because options are easily available. They're broad. People can do all kinds of searching on their own and buy from somebody else. How do we keep customers coming back to us? And how do we make sure that customers aren't just coming back to us, but they're happy and we understand where they are in the process?
Got it. And so again, my eighth grader says, all right, so I've got customers who are calling in, and the friction they experience sometimes because they can't visualize what it is the rep is saying. It's complex, potentially complex conversation. So if we can collaborate through the transaction by sharing screen, by manipulating, the fields and so forth together, I streamline and reduce the friction to that onboarding or that sale. Do I have it mostly right?
Yeah, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and time is of the essence. People's attention spans are short, and oftentimes, when you're starting in a self-service channel and you can't figure it out, you're like, I must be stupid. And so you get into a conversation with a real human being, emotions can be high, and so it's like, if I could simply show you, or if I could simply see where you are, conversations will be better. They'll lead to better outcomes.
Got it. All right. Well, so I like the idea of hand holding, and I'm going to use the word hand holding in terms of helping the customer get through the pictures help 1,000
Sure.
words. I'm curious, with all of the advent of generative AI and advancement of AI, does AI play a role in this conversation?
It absolutely does. And if you think about the types of things that we do on a regular basis, there's so much of our lives that are things that we know what to do. They're transactional by nature. And it's just like, could someone just make my life easier? And I think AI can play a huge role in that transactional piece when we get into decision making and needing advice and expertise on something. Because I always think about the human condition, and it goes back to like Columbia University back in the 60s. And it's like, when a decision point is of significant value, when that decision also leads to a long duration, meaning it's going to be like a mortgage, I'm going to spend 30 years in this thing, or my ability to really understand alternatives is low, I'm going to seek out someone who I trust, that knows things. And this is where that advice and expertise comes in. And I really think about the world in those two sort of veins.
Got it. And so, at being a consultant most of my career, I often think in terms of maturity models and how organizations can grow and evolve. I often use the expression CX is a journey, not a destination. And so, does maturity model, that concept, resonate in this conversation as well?
It does, because there's been I would call it the Gitmo, get me one of these. AI is hot. Like, I need one of these things. Put it in. Where's it going to work?
Yeah.
Is it going to drive the outcomes that I want? And if we put it in place, does it leave customers more stranded? Do they become more connected? So I think about like AI maturity model in terms of really thinking about what are some of the foundational things that people need to be thinking about and put in place, all the way into thinking about how do we be responsive to customers, and then starting to layer in things like a level of intelligence, a level of predictability, all the way into being really proactive. Because I do see, as AI is maturing, it's going to play a much bigger and stronger role in connecting people together.
Yeah. Although, when you think about that maturity, many organizations are really focused on operational efficiency of their agents, fewer errors, a variety of things along those lines. But the challenge that operational executives have right now is this influx of AI tools or tools in general and the change management required. So whether it's Glance or anything else, when you think about impacting an organization, how should an organization think about technology advancements and disruption in the call center these days? What's your opinion around it? There's a lot of thoughtware around it, obviously. I'm curious from your perch what your thoughts are.
Oh, I think there's, first and foremost, there's several operational and organizational sort of structural considerations that need to be discussed and thought through to ensure sort of like a successful, integration, aligning around benefits. And a lot of this really starts around, what are we trying to solve? You asked that question in the very beginning. Is like, what are we actually trying to solve? Because many times you can have siloed organizations say, we're going to solve this problem. But what it really does is it moves the problem to someone else into another business unit. But when you look at the customer in its totality, are we driving lifetime value? Are we increasing revenue through cross-sell, upsell opportunities? And so really getting down to making sure that we've got a clear line on the vision and goals, that we have leadership, top-down leadership that spans, all business units and all departments, because we can't just have one department saying, oh, we're going to do this, because it now suddenly involves data, and data lives over here and over here. Having that cross-functional collaboration, interdepartmental collaboration, and thinking about how we work, what I would think about, like from a development standpoint, using agile methodologies, because part of this is you have to start to play around with things to figure out, like, is it working? And there's a fair amount of tuning that involves getting things right. So I feel like that's sort of like the very basic thing that organizations need to do, is don't let one department just run on something. Think about this more, broadly, because you want to have a strategy corporately that's going to drive these things, because ultimately it's going to pull every department in the company together.
Yeah. So let me take a little bit of a left turn on you, and as it relates to insights. One of the things that, so I was talking to one of the founders of a training platform called Bright. And one of the comments they made was that they were able to increase attrition in their student training classes during the first 2 days of training. And somebody who's not a trainer might say, wait a second, so people are dropping out quicker? That sounds bad. But in reality, it's allowing people to self-select and know what they're getting into. And so the insight is, oh, I didn't think of it that way before. And so I use that as an example in my question to you. When you think about people using these collaboration tools, whether it's the client or the customer, can you think of an aha moment or something that was an unexpected benefit or an unexpected side effect, or something where the business said, well, we didn't bargain for that, but that was an interesting addition to the capability that we got out of doing some collaboration with our clients this way?
Yeah, I would say it's people start with the most prevalent pain point, but the second you collaborate, you often uncover all these other pieces. And it could be something that's in a sales process, but most often it's when a customer is now starting to get to use something. How many features do you actually use to really drive value? And so when you have those collaboration moments, you have that opportunity to open that aperture to reveal all kinds of things and ask some specific questions. And through that, people get a deeper understanding that leads to a higher value that they're receiving from that purchase or service. And it also leads an opportunity, because I think of let's go back to a time when you've walked into a nice restaurant, you've got someone who's caring for you, and they say, hey, if you're thinking about this, do you know what wine you want to have, or would you be willing to for me to make a suggestion? And you're like, well, I know what I know, but I'm now interested in what you know. And suddenly they open yourself up to a completely new realm. You take a taste and you're like, that's expanded my world. And now I've had a better experience. And so you can see these opportunities when people are together. And so this is where collaboration suddenly becomes the magical moment, which expands the conversation, leads to that ability to either deepen someone's relationship or experience and value with a service or a product, and then opens the door to that cross-sell, upsell, because that's where suddenly you get more information that's never revealed.
Interesting. I love that one. So I have this model of customer feedback that sort of, on the one hand, it's classic customer satisfaction surveys. Next dimension would be net promoter score, asking the one question, would you recommend this to friends and family? The corporate executive board developed the effortless experience customer effort score, reducing friction, those sorts of things. And Gartner recently introduced something in the last year or so called the value enhancement score. And the notion about the value enhancement score is, when you are, particularly in like a service to sales conversation or an engagement with a customer, when you get to a certain point where effectively helping them pick the right wine, it creates a much higher impact on customer loyalty, propensity to spend, some of those kind of things. And what I think I heard you say was the unexpected benefit was the value enhancement that comes from these engagements with customers through this collaboration, that they're finding other parts of the application. So is that a proper parallel? Am I interpreting this correctly?
Absolutely. And that's the emotional hook. It's the emotional hook that people suddenly go, you know, I had such a great experience. I bet I'll have another great experience. I'm going to go back
Yeah.
to that same restaurant or that same company. And I think when you ask friends, you know, colleagues, say, describe the best experience that you have had with a company, oftentimes, you know, they'll get really animated, talk about it, and then you say, hey, you know what, if they built a car or if they offered health insurance, would you buy it? You're like, I would. Well, I haven't even told you what type of car. It may have three wheels, or but they're passionate about that experience that leads them to wanting to engage more.
Yeah. Just a funny aside, I had a restaurant about 20 years ago bring my daughter chili cheese fries. They don't make chili cheese fries. They went across the street to the Skyline Chili to go bring it in. And it was an experience I still remember. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm curious though. I would think that some industries are better suited for this conversation than others. And how should I think about industry collaboration and whatnot? What are the parameters you think about? Even if it's not industry, what are the characteristics of an industry that make this most effective?
Yeah, I think when you think about one, humans value two things more than anything else in the world, you know, their finances and their health. And so that's just a natural place because that's where people focus their personal energy around, you know, my money, you know, and my health, that well-being. But I also know that, you know, there are things that, you know, people start to look at where you can say, hey, you know, I can buy lots of different things. But if you can suddenly say, hey, you know what, we're also a company that can help you be wildly successful with the products that you buy. And so you think about someone like Crutchfield's buying a stereo for my car. They have every install guide. And so you buy from Crutchfield. Why? Because they've got deep expertise. And I know the install and everything is going to be great. People buy from Amazon. Why? Because they have really pioneered, you know, that customer feedback, and now using AI to provide recommendations on like what other people buy. Sometimes I'm a little curious of like, is it what they want me to buy, or is it really like, you know, peer group? But I do feel like, you know, people seek out advice, and so we could go back into the finances around, you know, wealth. I can now day trade everything on my own. I've got all the tools and the know-how. I just don't know what to buy. I need to, how do I allocate a portfolio correctly? So it becomes less about knowing how to use tools, and it's really about deep knowledge, you know, around investing, about doing my taxes, about, you know, making sure that I'm getting the right, you know, benefits in my health insurance, et cetera.
Got it. So I got one inbound question. If there are others, please put them in the chat. But so the question is really around, I guess, engagement. In other words, when a agent has this tool at their disposal, how do they know when to engage it from a collaboration perspective? Every conversation doesn't necessarily require it, I assume. And so I think somebody's trying to walk in the shoes of an agent trying to figure this out. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is, you know, from a business standpoint, we go out and talk with a lot of different people who, we ask, like, talk to me about the use cases that you have. Some people will say, well, we have 5 use cases. We could then talk to someone else and say, well, we have 300. They've literally figured out every little step of that journey. And they're now saying, you know what, we want collaboration to be built into it. So when a customer hits that journey, it's going to be automatic. The agent's going to use it. It's going to be a tool. It's going to be a system. They're going to have access to all these things, and they're going to follow it through. So it's not a decision point of like, well, do I need to use something to enhance or drive a better outcome? It's already pre-programmed in. So it's part of that journey. I think when you get to you know, experiences when people are getting connected, and now that maybe it's off script or they're now talking about something else, we believe that, you know, reducing that friction is really important. So when people are on and you have the ability to go, hey, Tom, I see you're on our, you know, mobile app, our website. Why don't I guide you through it? And having the ability to have presence and knowing that someone's there to be able to then join in those sessions and reduce the friction, I think is really important. But the thing that we know is Humans will use solutions at the last possible moment because they're like, I think I got this. I think I got this, until they don't. And that's why we talk a lot about saying, let's talk about those use cases and build the ideal journey. Because when you start things early and you collaborate, man, you get on the same page immediately. And that then leads to that opportunity to expand the conversation.
Outstanding. Well, that's no more questions on the inbound, and that was the end of my questions. Although your last answer, my reaction is it sounds like it's I don't know, programmatic, structured. It's a little more structured, and because I know contact center executives are always concerned about agent adoption of tools, and so the more programmatic and structured it is, that makes sense. So thank you for that. Tom, I want to thank you for the time today. This was an engaging, fun discussion, no doubt. I'll give you a second if you've got any last words of guidance or advice for the audience. Otherwise, thank you for the time.
Yeah, Tom, thank you. I think my lasting words really are around the fact that people want to do business with businesses that they know, like, and trust. And finding ways to make sure that you give customers that opportunity to connect with real people while you're figuring out technology and improving different ways, because AI is real. There's so many things that it can be used, but part of this is making sure that you're driving the outcomes that you want. And humans are going to play an important role as we implement this technology. So for sure.
Wise words. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it very much. And for the audience, thank you for joining. If there's any questions around Glance or this topic in general, feel free to reach out to Tom, I guess. We're both Toms, so take your pick. Be happy to have a conversation with you. And thanks again. Bye-bye.